We're lucky to have Dr. Preye Angaye, the Executive Director of Strategy and New Business, has joined us to talk about innovative approaches to FPSO project execution, lessons group from Century Group Nigeria. So, Dr. Preye.
I guess we're still in the morning hours. Okay. So good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. My CEO, Ken Etete, was meant to be here to make a presentation, but at very last minute, some of the issues came up and he had to step down. But he sends his apologies. He actually indeed wanted to see everyone personally. Today I'm here with the Director of Corporate Communications, Mr. Carl Harris, and I'll be making the presentation on behalf of my CEO, Ken Etete. My name is Dr. Preye Angaye. So let's get started. We will be discussing innovative approaches in FPSO project execution, lessons from Century Group. Let's have an overview. Okay, that's fine. So, an overview of Century Group. Who are we? Century Group has been in business for well over 2 decades. We are an African brand that's committed to sustainable supply of energy through the provision of innovative solutions and competent professionals for optimal value creation. Century Group has participated in well over 50 significant and influential energy projects, collectively valued at over $10 billion US. The Century Group owns 3 FPSOs, which we also operate. These FPSOs are christened the Tamara Tokoni, the Tamara Nanaye, and Tamara Elmina, operating various fields in Nigeria. We also operate 1 FSO on behalf of a client, the FSO Elia Castle, and 4 flow stations that are being managed by us that are very functional and profitable. We boast when we say we also operate on a 30% average production cost reduction on behalf of our clients, ensuring that they remain very profitable and there's every need for continuity. Our core competence as a group is in the supply, operation, and maintenance of offshore energy infrastructure. When we think of an FPSO project execution, what really comes to our mind? It's actually a journey that can take the investor to different realms, sometimes of happiness, distress, and then satisfaction. We know that for an FPSO project to be effectively executed, there has to be meticulous planning, coordination, and execution across multiple areas. I know this is well known to everybody, or most people seated in this room. When you think of the sequence to FPSO installation, it would mean an oil field, us having the conceptualization of the design and then feasibility studies to assess that indeed that project is viable. There will be the need for front-end engineering and project plans. Thereafter, we would have the detailed engineering and procurement phase. When all these designs are finalized, equipment will be procured. There will be construction, conversion, integration, and then the eventual transportation of the FPSO to the location. It might sound all easy and sweet, but it's usually traumatic when you experience certain shocks. And I think that's common with most projects, not just the FPSO one. So if it's possible for us to relax ourselves a little bit and watch a little clip on what goes through the mind of one that's involved in project execution, I think that would help. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, it was nice to see everybody watching the screen. At least it relaxed us a little bit. But now let's bring it back home. So that was an ant. Suddenly it found itself in a pit. So this is your mind. A project is being executed. With that project execution comes the stress. So you could see at points when the ant never knew where it was. Then there was the light bulb moment when you think that the project is in a good space. There was the greenery when you're kind of excited. And then in all of that bliss, suddenly there were the meteorites. Some level of commotion sets in. And that's what project execution usually would entail. And then you could see the ant going up the labyrinth, which tells that there are a number of stakeholders that you need to manage in cause of the FPSO project execution. There are regulatory hurdles. You need to understand the expectations of the field owner, the community where you're operating. So it's sometimes really very challenging. But just as we heard from the last video clip, from every challenge, there is always an opportunity. And generally, that's what we would be discussing. The fact that we've had traditional approaches to FPSO project execution that have been challenged by overall issues relating to delays, cost overruns, and environmental concerns. We've had reasons for people to now decide on better ways of project execution. And then we're saying that FPSOs have evolved significantly. Now they offer a range of operational capabilities beyond just oil and gas provision or production. The versatility allows operators to maximize offshore resource value and reduce dependency on onshore infrastructure. There has been the evolution in the advancement, with the industry experiencing continuous advancements in digitalization, automation, and energy efficiency. When you think of the modern approaches, you would equally appreciate that, especially on the Egina, there's what we call the digital twin technology that has been deployed. And I think David spoke about it earlier, where we're saying that with the deployment of this technology, there's the possibility for real-time monitoring, predictive maintenance, and enhanced operational efficiency overall. And as I said, the Bonga FPSO's digital twin represents its entire physical counterpart in detail, providing critical insights for maintenance, safety, and operational decision-making. Some other innovation has to do with the fact that you now have modular construction of FPSOs so that it's overall built at a reduced cost. You also have a case of advanced project management software. And then because of the need for sustainability, we now have sustainability practices injected into these innovations. We're also very much aware of the fact that there has been collaboration in recent times where open coalition comprising Rockwell Automation, Sensia, Cognite, and Schlumberger, SLB, have come up with technologies that ensure enhanced overall efficiency, safety, and sustainability. But let's go to the very essence of this presentation, Africa's energy deficits. What does that imply? We're basically saying that there is a debt of infrastructure, represented by the FPSO you see there. There's limited availability of finance for hydrocarbon projects. That's why you see the bag of dollars there. And then multiple regulatory hurdles. And you see the poor dog trying to jump over that hurdle. Now, these are things that in executing FPSO projects in Africa, you need to grapple with. And the fact that these have become challenges, they have necessitated that innovation that we're going to be speaking about today. But it's important to understand that the elephant in the room remains access to finance. We know that many entities, especially in Europe, the Middle East, are now focused on cleaner energy, and funding for energy in Africa is being reduced drastically. So where does Century Group innovate? What has brought us to the fore? What has kept us going? That's what we'll be discussing. We would want to say that every project and infrastructure is unique, just as the client's corporate objectives, are. To this end, the customer insights and the purpose of each project must be clearly understood. The realities of the African field developer differs from those in the Middle East and Europe, although they all share the same standard of care, safety, and value proposition. These realities prompted the design of a project execution blueprint. And when we speak of our project execution blueprint, what are we speaking about? We're speaking in terms of a model which we have called the risk service contract model. And what does that imply? We're saying that for the risk contract model, it encompasses a number of things. But most importantly, it looks at access to finance. We know that the oil and gas industry, because of it's subject to volatile market conditions, certain times raises concerns to financing. But the Century Group has remained resilient, and it has adapted to all these challenges with confidence. We have remained a formidable player because we have known how to deal with the issue of financing. And then the other speakers had also spoken about the environment, which has to do with sustainability. We also ensure that the environment is given great concern in all the activities we carry out. There's also that bit of competence development and training. So as much as possible, we ensure that our training programs are top-notch and always ongoing. Over time, there has been the adoption of the CMMS, which enables us to ensure that we're efficient when it comes to equipment monitoring, maintenance, scheduling, and planning, regulatory compliance, resource allocation, crew management, and training. So these are some of the things I've spoken about: access to financing, stakeholder management, where we're saying that we understand that the success of the group is intertwined with that of the community it serves. So we must give cognizance to the needs of the customers, the government, the investor, the community, the suppliers, the trade unions, and the creditors. The user experience, we have also discussed that in saying that the successful of, especially the FPSO Tamara Elmina, one of our FPSOs, was at a 40% cost savings to the asset owners. And that is indeed commendable. That would further lead us into the model we are suggesting or advancing, which is the risk service contract model, which indeed deals with the issue of access to financing. So what does the risk service contract model entail? We're basically saying that a contract risk service model is a viable solution to the FPSO project funding challenge. How does that work? I mean, we're very much aware that international companies now pivot towards deep offshore and gas-rich assets, and indigenous firms and smaller operators are stepping in to bridge the gap. But securing capital for appraising and developing these near-production assets has remained a significant hurdle. And therefore, this innovative financing model, which we pioneer. This model involves the contractors assuming financial risks. So it's not just to the field owner. The contractor assumes financial risks and receives payments from production, which at the end of the day incentivizes the efficient asset development while reducing risk for operators. So in this model, the contractors are essentially acting as co-financiers and investors in the oil blocks development, foregoing immediate payments for future returns from oil and gas production. The contractor risk is thus embedded in the deferred payment mechanism. The success of such a model would obviously then depend on the collaboration and support of all the stakeholders, which we discussed earlier, the operators, the joint venture partners, financiers, regulatory authorities, and even the local communities. We're saying that by aligning incentives and sharing risks, that these partnerships can drive sustainable development and enhance investor returns. A very good example of where this risk service contract model was applied had to do with one of the projects we recently carried out, which was an alternative crude oil evacuation system on the FPSO earlier Castle. This project was facilitated by the contract risk service model, and it was all about collaboration to unlock value and foster growth. The alternative crude oil evacuation system was essentially developed to enhance production and supply security from oil blocks in the eastern Niger Delta of Nigeria, addressing issues caused by infractions and prolonged outages of the Nembe Creek trunk line, historically a major oil transportation artery, evacuating up to 150,000 barrels of crude oil per day from the Niger Delta to the Atlantic coast for exports. So this model, the risk service contract model, implied us co-investing with the field owner, and the project was effectively executed. The CG model is designed in Nigeria, quite all right, for Nigerian oil and gas operations, but we think it has the potential for regional and global application in countries where access to capital for oil and gas development is limited. Unlike traditional approaches, this model does not focus solely on optimizing oil production for the client's success. The model involves the contractors taking on financial and production risks. Traditional contractors usually would go for a pay-as-you-go approach, which would necessarily imply mobilization and prepayment fees, and you know what that implies. It could leave the operators vulnerable if the assets underperform. But in contrast, we're saying that the risk service contract model would ensure that the contractors are financially invested in the success of the project, aligning their interests with those of the operators. It will also be nice to address the issue of competence, because these are two key areas, financing and then competence development and training, which is something we pride ourselves in. Safety is at the core value of Century Group, and this is reflected in our rigorous safety protocols and continuous investments in the workforce training, thanks to the fact that we've adopted a computerized maintenance management system, which helps us even in crew management and training. Very recently, we had a training in Guyana where we exposed the Guyana interested parties to specialized operations on FPSO operations. We gave them the theoretical basics of FPSO operations and then health and safety practices on the FPSO. And we have an agreement for them to come on board our FPSO so that it's not just theory, but practical, exposure. So that's what we believe in as Century Group, that apart from just the theory, we ensure that there is that practical training. And this reflects in the knowledge sharing sessions we have. And we're quite happy that this has over time been very successful in our operations. So just some bit of analytics. If the video can run, I think, and that would be the, do you have the analytics? Just to show our position in the oil and gas space. Energy companies in the Nigerian offshore oil industry. Thank you. And that will be the end of my presentation.
We have time for a few questions. Any questions? There we go. I was just wondering, when you take that additional risk, how can you get the guarantees you require to get the debt and especially the debt for the projects? Because you take on a lot of additional risk, and what we do see today in general is that then it's much more difficult to get financing. How do you manage that?
Okay, so you remember I said it has to do with all the parties coming to understanding. So the fact that we're believing in that asset, you, the field owner, you also need to participate in ensuring that all the guarantees that are required are also in place. But we have an understanding that we are not expecting a case of an upfront payment that is totally disrupting and discouraging to you, the field operator. So there's that understanding, and there is a way to ensure that we efficiently get to production so that we can all recoup our investments. We would go into such an arrangement believing, basically because of studies that would have been conducted on the ability of the operator we're equally taking risks with to live up to his expectations, and then we carry the financing institution along in all discussions so that every party is relatively comfortable.
Is it local financial institutions or is it international?
We have local and international. But for the fact that everybody is exposed to the discussions and we have all the data concerning that asset, there is that reassurance. The point here is if everybody decides not to provide finance, then these assets would never be produced.
Okay, we actually are running out of time, but I do want to leave on a positive note. So what's the chance that Nigerian, on that last film, I saw some multinational oil company names. What's the chance that more of those will become operated by Nigerian companies? And then what's the chance of Nigerian FPSO owner-operators expanding farther throughout Africa?
We expect that there would be a reasonable change in ownership. So we're likely to see less of the IOCs up there and more of indigenous companies. And the intention is for continuous expansion beyond Nigeria to other African countries as well.
Great message. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.